Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I'm very excited to share with you all about my time serving in Ljubljana, Slovenia. It doesn't seem that long ago that I was standing before many of you and sharing about this opportunity, about, I guess, a year and a half ago. And God has been incredibly faithful in the past 16 months. And I wanted to thank you all so much for your support and prayers. They really mean so much to me and have made such an impact and have greatly encouraged me while serving overseas. So Slovenia is a very small country. It's in the red on the screen. It's in Central Europe, and the bordering countries are Italy, Austria, and Hungary and Croatia. So it's kind of where it is on the map. And this country is around the same size of the state of Massachusetts. So it's a very small country in size. And I wanted to share just some background history because it has greatly impacted the country as a whole. And throughout history, Slovenia has kind of been tossed back and forth between different empires and leaders. It has been a part of the Roman Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And after World War I, Slovenia became a part of the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slavs. And then in 1929, this was then renamed Yugoslavia, which many of you maybe recognize, the former communist country that included 6 different republics. And that is on the map on the screen, where Yugoslavia includes those 6 different Balkan nations as well. And so this country, like I said, is communist and operated under those ideals, and one of those being the belief that there is no God. And so that was definitely proclaimed and kind of took root in a lot of people's minds and hearts. During World War II, German forces came in and invaded the country, and there's actually a path around the city in the capital Ljubljana that's called the Path of Remembrance, and it kind of outlines the confines of the city during the German occupation. And so it was, I think, living here, it was crazy to be there and see how these world wars had impacted those countries so very deeply. And so in 1991 is actually the date or the year that Slovenia came independent from Yugoslavia. So it's a very young country in that only about just over 30 years old in being its own independent country. So all of this history has definitely impacted the Slovenes today, and also the reception to the gospel. And also on the slides I put 2 pictures from ruins from World War I that I saw while I was there. The top left is an old bunker, and then the tunnel. So those were both used during World War I when it was a front for fighting. Also, castles are a familiar sight in Europe and in Slovenia. And I think often, I guess, when I always thought about castles, I would think of royalty, and you think of kings and queens, but that's not very often the case. In a lot of castles, they are actually used more as fortresses and used as a way of protecting the people. And so the most notable of the ones I pictured was on the top left. This was actually built into a cave, so that they were able to, when they were under siege, were able to get supplies from the other side of the cave. And so, really crazy. I visited that when my family came. And then I pictured some other castles there. A lot of times they'd be up on hills so that you could see the surrounding area when other people tried to attack, so they were able to protect the cities around them. And so there's 3 main beliefs that I encountered while living there, and these are atheism, kind of brought on by the communist ideals, mysticism in combination with New Age practices, such as yoga, going to fortune tellers, crystals, similar like that. And then that's also often in combination with Catholicism. So a lot of people who also would profess to be Catholic take part in a lot of different mysticism type practices. And so Catholicism oftentimes there is also by name only, or kind of a generational thing that they have of like, oh, my grandparents were Catholic, so that makes me Catholic, even though they don't even know really even who Jesus is. So there's a great disconnect with a relationship with Jesus and what it means to be a believer and to be a part of the church. There's a great misconception of what the church is and looks like there. And so I included the left two pictures are pictures from Catholic churches, and then the right is a prominent national holiday, All Saints' Day, which is practiced on November 1st, where people go to the cemetery and place candles or flowers by loved ones' graves. So the Slovene language is very difficult. It's a Slavic origin, and it contains several different unique characteristics that kind of set it apart. It conjugates verbs similar to Spanish, if some of you guys know Spanish, but it also has different cases, and sometimes it's hard to explain in English, but it changes the endings of the word depending on the quantity or the gender of what you were talking about. And it also is one of the only languages in the world that uses dual. And so this is really interesting. You can say, depending on the way I say it, it will change, and I can infer that I'm only talking about two people or two things. So for example, I can say grem na kavo, which means I go for a coffee. I can say greva na kavo, means us two will go for a coffee, or gremo na kavo, which means we will all go for a coffee. So you can infer that it's just two people that you're talking about, which is it's very interesting. And then with that, the 6 different cases and the 3 different options for talking about quantity makes a total of 18 different possible endings to a word. So you can see it's very complex in its nature and very difficult to learn, but it was also a pleasure to learn. And for the first 4 months that we were there, we focused on language learning, and then throughout the rest of the time, I became conversational in language, but many people, especially in my generation and in college, would be learning English, and they love to practice that as well. So I would often speak English with them, and then with the older generation, that's where my Slovene came into practice more. And then the verse that's on the screen is from Acts 16:31, and that's believe in the Lord Jesus and you will be saved, you and your household. Alright, so a lot of questions I get is what kind of food is over there. So I thought I would just give a slide with some of the different popular or traditional foods. And so on the bottom left is klobasa, which is sausage, and then there's sauerkraut and szgancy, which is like a buckwheat crumble type. So definitely sausage is really popular. The middle picture is grilled meats, and that's really popular among the Balkan region, grilled meats and like vegetables. The top right is a picture of my sister and I at a kocha, which is like a restaurant on top of a hill. And so you often, when you go hiking with someone, you hike up to the top and then you have a meal. And we are eating jota, which is like a sauerkraut soup. And then on the bottom right is a very common dessert, although it's not very sweet, called potica, and often has, it looks like a cinnamon roll, but it's not. It's mostly like different crumbled nuts, like walnuts or almonds, and that's kind of the swirl in it. So definitely it was fun to try the different foods, and it was great opportunity for that. And then here are some just pictures of the beauty there. It's a very beautiful country. The left portion is very mountainous, the right portion is very flat and plains. The upper left is a picture that when my family came and visited, we went to the Socha Valley, which is a very beautiful valley with a river. And this river is actually where Prince Caspian was filmed. If some of you guys have seen Prince Caspian from the Chronicles of Narnia, part of it was filmed in that area. The bottom, just below that, is Lake Bled, which is a very common place to go, and some other pictures from the seaside. You can see it's kind of a small picture, but the bottom right has a picture from above, so you can see the roofs. And the terracotta kind of clay roofs are really common there, a common sight to see. So I lived in Ljubljana, which is the capital city, and on the left is kind of the city center. So in every city you have kind of a city square that people would kind of congregate around, and it's a great place to meet with people. But it's also very rainy and foggy in Ljubljana, kind of in the valley. And another thing that made life there very notable was biking. So on the right side, there's a crosswalk, and it has, I apologize for the picture, it's kind of dark, but it has like a bike symbol for when to go across to, and so you have your own lane on the sidewalk. And you never want to walk on the bike lane because you'll know you're in the wrong spot. So it's just a little bit about what made life in Ljubljana a little bit different than other places. And so this is a picture of my team that came from America, as well as the national leaders that we worked with there. So our mission strategy was really to partner with the church, because there's such a misconception over what the church is and who Jesus is. So we really focused on ministering alongside the church and discipling local believers. And so we helped out with the Sunday service every week. We would put together like a prayer service on prayer. On Wednesdays we would do Bible study, and then kind of throughout the time we would do other events such as like a game night to bring times of fellowship, or like worship and prayer nights as well. Because of the culture, the complicated history in Slovenia, the spiritual ground is very hard and difficult, and the people can be very stoic at first and very hardened to forming relationships, which was very kind of discouraging at first, but it took a long time to gain trust. But when those relationships were formed, they were built on such deep trust and loyalty, and created such great opportunities to really go deep into conversation. And so, up on top, the church I work with was called Binkoshna Sterko. It was just such a pleasure to serve alongside each of those, and looking at them, I miss them all a lot. I'm going to go to the next slide. So these are the different church ministries that they had kind of formed as different outreaches into the community and ways to strengthen the church. Podvig is the publishing house that they have, and it's one of the only Christian kind of publishing literature in the country, and so they're able to translate different books, Christian books from other languages, a lot of them being English, or another project that I'll talk about on the other slide will be printed through this organization. And so the picture of me on the left with the sign below was in the open market. We would hand out free literature, and this was a great opportunity for conversation, people to connect and realize and hear about the church in town, or a place for believers to be able to come and get different literature or books that they were looking for. And the next one is Mosaic, and that is kind of the outreach ministry arm of the church. And it was such encouraging, even though it was such a small church, they really sought to also to minister to not only the nation, but also the nations surrounding them. And so they would partner in prayer with other churches in the Balkan region, and kind of have that team of support, which was so cool to see. And Voditi, which I didn't have any great pictures of, but it's the idea of bringing leaders together in all around the country, and we would put together like a leadership conference, and it's something that my site leader was really passionate about, was bringing the church together and in unity. There's a lot of disunity there and mistrust built through just the past and the future there, and so many of the churches don't want to work together, and so it was really hard to see that, and something that our leader was passionate about, something we kind of came alongside, was bringing a unity and being able to see these pastors come together for the first time in a long time, and be able to encourage one another and work together to bring about the gospel into the country of Slovenia. The pictures that I have on the right side was a project that my team and I put together Easter last year, and they were just kind of some baskets to encourage the congregation, because at that time we were not able to meet in person because we were in a lockdown, and so we had to be very creative in different types of ministries and ways that we were able to connect with the church. And so with this, we were able to meet with some of them in person for the first time and hand them and help them feel connected as a church and know that they are loved and they are cared for, and that we are here for them. And so that was a really cool project to be a part of, and that's a picture of the basket below, and then us kind of putting them together up above. So then here are a few of my individual ministries at the church, one being leading in worship, and that was such a beautiful thing. I've always loved music, and so I love being a part of worship there. The picture on the lower left is from a church service with my teammates Abigail and Brandon, and then on the lower right is a picture from a concert that we put on at a church plant that was kind of near the seaside, and so it was a really great opportunity to connect with that church and kind of help build that relationship, as well as an outreach into that community, as it was a very new church, and so being able to get the word out. And it was a beautiful night of fellowship and of connecting with one another. The upper right is a project that I worked on kind of throughout my time there, and it was a children's music book, and it's going to be one of the first one of a printed music book in Slovene for children's worship. And so the song that I put on the screen is Jesus Loves the Little Children. And so I would bring together the notes and the Slovene and put it together in a format that is displayed on the screen above. Another one of my favorite ministries was working with Royal Rangers, and this is kind of a Boy Scouts meets Awana. It's a church group that also really focuses on like outdoor ministry or outdoor activities, and so we would have a skit and a discussion, a teaching, and then we would also go and do some outdoor activities. One time my group went for a nature walk, those are the pictures on the right, and then often we would have a dinner, our time of fellowship at the end, and that's the kids making some s'mores on the left, they're making s'mores and being all together. This is the summer camp for Royal Rangers, and if as some of you may know or I've shared before, I love camp, and it's greatly impacted my own personal walk with the Lord, and so it's such a pleasure to see camp ministry overseas and to be a part of that. And we had just like a record number of attendance. We had about 80 kids, And then with adult leaders, we were about 100 of us that were all sleeping in tents in this field and cooking our meals over the fire. And this was probably one of my favorite weeks in Slovenia. And I was with the oldest group and really loved getting to know them. My favorite moments were our conversations over the campfire. We did a sunrise hike, even though it was early in the morning. It was so cool to see the kids kind of overcome that adversity, overcome that challenge, and make it up to the top, and be able to see that sunrise and to worship with one another there. And one of the most impactful things for me to see as well, one of our last nights, we were there, they had a time of worship and had some different stations set up for the kids to go to, and one of those being a place where they could write down their burdens or times or confessions to the Lord. They had a place where there was a cross where they could bring those burdens to Him and place their hand on the cross. And they also had a place where they could go and be prayed for over by leaders. And I think I saw almost every kid go to every station that night. It was just deeply impactful for me to see this young generation, as young as 4 years old up to 16, just wanting to experience Jesus. This was a young adult camp that I was able to go to in the eastern part of the country. And this was also just super impactful to see this kind of next generation that will be the next generation of church leaders, and being in one room with the entire country's young adult Christian group and worshiping together. On the upper right is me with a good friend Petra, and then on the lower right is my team, as we did like an Olympic type game. And so that was really cool experience to see as well. And like I said, it was so cool to see this next generation that will be leaders in that, and to be able to pray with them and encourage them and be encouraged by them as well. These are the other 2 camps that I helped out with. One of them is an English camp on the picture on the left, with kind of young kids from all around, and this was also an outreach to some like lower income families or like minorities that were in the area. So we kind of had children from all over, and some that had very little experience at all with religion, or they really also struggled in school and things like that. So we were able to really meet some different needs and be able to share Jesus with them, some of them for the first time. And then upper right was a very small group, but it was a camp that our church put on, was a discipleship camp. And a week before, we only had 1 person signed up, and the Lord provided for 4 girls, 14. So it was incredible that they were able to come to be with us for the week. And it was so beautiful. They would always come and ask every day what the Bible story was going to be. And I never saw that age so excited to be in God's Word and so excited to be like, what are we going to talk about? How can I learn? How can I grow and become more like Jesus? And that was a beautiful week, and so cool to see at the ages of 11, 12, 13, just an eagerness to read God's Word. These are some friendships and people that are very dear to my heart, and people that the Lord kind of put in my path while there. The lower left is a friend, Nasia. She is a friend that I kind of came in connection with through one of my roommates through social media, and it was her first time ever going on that social media, and she only hasn't gone on since then. But that's the day that the Lord brought her on there to connect with my friend, to connect with our group. And she had grown up kind of in the Catholic Church, but had no understanding really of what a relationship with Jesus is, and what that even looks like. She had no Christian community around her. She kind of was like, there's probably a God, but what does that even mean for me? And so we would just welcome her with open hands and answer her questions, just do life with her. She loved hiking, and so I'd often go on hikes with her. And that was probably one of the hardest goodbyes, and she shared with me about the impact that we had in just solidifying who Jesus can walk out, and we were able to connect her with local believers as well, and so she now has a Christian community that she can grow and be with. And I can tell stories of each of these people and the ways that they've impacted my life and the ways that the Lord has just encouraged their lives. And it's been, it was so beautiful to see the Lord and the ways He provided. The right two people, Marusha on top and down below Margot, are from our church. Marusha became baptized 1 year before we came, so very new in her faith, and would often have questions about faith, what it means to live as a Christian. And I was always so encouraged by her, and even just such a young believer, she would come in and would tell me stories of how she was able to witness to her coworkers, of how she was reading the Bible during lunch break and they would ask her what she's reading. And I know she's going to be just such a prominent leader in the church there. On the left is Montenegro, and grew up in the Orthodox church, but kind of switched to more of an evangelical church, and has been just growing her faith in the realization of also a relationship with Jesus. One of my favorite stories to tell, or the ministries that we had there, was an English worship night. And this was kind of an idea that the Lord had given me as a ministry to other local or native English speakers that were serving there either as missionaries or were there with the embassy or just living in Slovenia. Because I love worshiping in Slovene, but there was nothing like worshiping in English. You're just able to connect more when it's your heart language and understand more fully what you are saying in worship. And so we put on, as a team, this English night of worship. And we were able to, even other people would come, Slovenes would come, and they would worship with us in our native language as well. And the last night that we were able to do this in November, we had a young man that came in and had seen our flyer outside the church and had kind of come in to see what this night of worship was all about. He was a student that was serving in Slovenia and was originally from Macedonia. And through that experience, he'd grown up in the Orthodox church and also had that kind of disconnect with a relation that really affect me today, or that doesn't affect me now. I'm sure there's a God that created things, but that doesn't change how I live my life or what my eternity looks like. And so through that worship night, he shared with us at the end of just how impacted he was of God's love for him and his desire to be in that relationship, to be the center of his life and not just this like distant God, but a personal God. And so he actually goes to the church now in Košno, and he is now surrounded by people that can disciple him, that can encourage him, and can help him grow in his faith. So yeah, that was such a cool ministry because it was something that was intended for an outreach to English speakers, and God used it in so many other ways as well to encourage and to bring people from other countries and other languages as well to be impacted for His glory. And so this is a big lesson. I wanted to tell you all about a lesson I learned in Slovenia and the ways that God taught me. He taught me so many different things, but one of the most prominent being to learn to trust in a season of uncertainty. And our world has a lot of uncertainty right now. I think even living overseas, when there's so much changing in the US, and even worldwide, there is so much uncertainty of what the next day would even bring. And we really had to be flexible with ministry, with ever-changing regulations. We had to be flexible in how we were able to connect with people. I was kind of like, had my arms out and like, okay, I'm going to take a few steps, but I can't really see what's ahead, God, but I'm trusting you. And another example of that is on the right picture is the red and white dot is a trail marker on the hiking trails in Slovenia. And it's often like that of having to see, okay, where are those Holy Spirit markers? Where is the God leading? And I need to be on the look for that, be where He's leading and guiding in that moment, and find those markers, find those places, because He is at work in the world around us. And sometimes when there's uncertainty or chaos, it's hard to see those things, but He is, and we gotta look for those moments. And so the Lord really taught me to really lean on Him and trust Him in that time of just so much uncertainty and so much not knowing what's next, but He's faithful and He's good, and He brought me through, and He's bringing us through. So what's next? I am actually going back to my campus tomorrow, and we have classes on kind of reentry and transition back from kind of culture shock. We have classes on kind of like recapping what we learned and kind of processing our time overseas, and then also helping us kind of discover those next steps or connecting us with organizations or things like that. So my current plan is to complete my certification in Montessori teaching. It's a very hands-on type of learning, and so that will be this next summer and school year of student teaching. And I hope to use that in some capacity in ministry in the future. I don't know what exactly yet. I know the Lord knows, and He will lead and guide when I'm on high. Is a common song that we sang at camps, because it's very simple and it shares the gospel. And so I'm going to sing it in Slovene, and then I'll sing it in English. And so if you guys know the song, you can join with me the second time around. Błogosławię Twoje imię, Rabbi pevam Tebi pesem, dajem swoje Ti srce, Ti si dal mi rešenje, prišel nebesi na svet, I'm so glad you came.